Greetings everyone. This is Sian Krendikar. My presentation is about the wage gap. Please watch the video to understand the background of this subject.
For every dollar a man earns, a woman makes about 80 cents, and it widens for female minorities. But remember, that's comparing all full-time workers. That doesn't take into account the type of job or amount of experience.
This frail creature strikes her typewriter keys about 40,000 times a day.
Back in 1960, women were making 61 cents on the dollar. There are a couple laws that went into effect that are supposed to help with this, like the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which prohibits sex-based wage discrimination between men and women who work in the same place with the same job. And then there's Lily Ledbetter.
I went to work for Goodyear Tire and Rubber in 1979. Worked there for 19 years. Managers in the classification I was in, we got a base pay. Mine at that time was $3,727. That was the base pay per month. Now you have to remember, this goes way back to 1998. And then I found out how much less I was making than the three men that we four had the same job. Two of them was almost 6,000 and one was close to it.
So Lily filed a suit and her case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. But she lost on a rule that said she had 180 days from her first paycheck to file. In 2009, President Obama signed the Lily Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which removed that 180-day rule. So why are we still here? There are some things already stacked against women. First, some gender discrimination still exists. There's also what experts call the motherhood penalty. If women have children, they might take time off from work. And when they return, they might see a drop in their pay long term because they never quite catch up. Women also tend to choose jobs with more flexible hours, often to take care of those children, which tend to pay less. But even after you drill down into specific jobs, the wage gap is still there. Nearly 80% of all elementary and middle school teachers are female, but men still make more than women for doing the same work. And hey, you might be thinking, it's just 20 cents. But on average, 20 cents turns into more than $10,000 in a year. And that's money that could be used to buy a home or save for retirement. Lily Ledbetter could have used that money to do the same.
I tell people I don't have any money, but I sure do have some major scrapbooks because I'm trying to keep all of this for history purposes anyway.
Effort put forth is effort towards getting the job done regardless of the sex or gender of the person who applied that effort. Thus, why should females get paid less for the same effort they put into a job than their male counterpart? As of the 2000, meaning as of the statistics gathered in 2015 by the Census Bureau, meaning the US Census Bureau, the average woman in the United States is paid 20% less than their male counterparts. The research and information I have gathered will paint a story of sexism and racial discrimination, an ongoing fight for equality in today's society. The wage gap was much larger in the 1960s than today, with women getting paid on average less than 60% than their male counterparts. Much progress has been made since then, but we still have a long way to go. In the past 10 years, the rate of change of the decrease was meaning of the decrease of the wage gap has decreased. Hence, projecting that up, meaning that at the current rate of change, women will not reach pay equality with men until 2152. It will take more than a century to close the wage gap. The following graph compares women's median annual earning as percentage of men's median annual earnings for full-time, year-round workers, 1960 to 2015. The graph predicts that the wage gap will end in 2152 if the current trend of steady increase in women's pay. There are several factors that affect the wage gap. Ethnicity is one of the factors. Regardless of ethnicity, women, on average, are paid less than men from the same ethnic group. Thus, all women are paid less than their male counterpart from the same ethnic group. The wage gap is higher between males and females amongst the ethnic group that, meaning the ethnic groups that, on average, annually make more, thus rendering the wage gap is smaller within ethnic groups with lower median annual earnings. Hispanic and Latina or Latino, African American, American Indian, Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander, and American Indian and Alaska Native groups all have had lower median annual earnings compared to non-Hispanic white and Asian Americans. Thus, referring to the second statement on the previous slide, non-Hispanic white and Asian ethnic groups have a higher wage gap between men and women than other ethnic groups. This graph supports my statement on the earlier slides. We can see the wage Hispanic male and female is much smaller than Asian men and women. Next, I'm going to discuss the age factor as both men and women age. On average, as they get older, their pay increases. However, regardless of age, women are typically paid less than a male within the same age range throughout their lifetime. The wage gap between males and females increases as they become older. From the age of approximately 16 to 34, the wage to gender gap is the smallest, about 90%. From the age of 35 to 65, the wage gap between females and males increases by approximately another 13%. The following graph depicts the statistics for fact 3. The wage gap between males and females between the ages 16 to 19 is less than ages between 55 to 64. Educational factor which affects the wage is discussed here. In most Asian cultures, families support education of male children and they expect female to learn household chores. This is a different topic for research, but it is related to wage gap. One's pay increases with a higher level of education. However, regardless of the amount of education a woman has compared to a man, they still make less than their male counterpart compared at each educational level. The following graph depicts the statistics for fact 4. The wage is smaller amongst women and men of lesser education than the graph, meaning the gap amongst women and men with a 4-year degree or higher level of education. When we combine ethnicity and education for analyzing wage gap for issue, we come up with following findings. Higher education improves earnings of women of all races and ethnicities. Ethnicity plays a significant role in one's average pay compared to education. The following graph shows the statistics for fact 5. In the United States, Hispanic or Latinas and African American women are, on average, paid less than their white female counterpart at each educational level. The average pay gap amongst females from an ethnic group with a higher median income versus a lower median income widens as the amount of education increases. Some additional factors such as sexuality that also contributes to the discriminatory practices of the employers in paying wages to their employees. Authors of an article, The Sexual Orientation, the Wage Gap, the Role of Occupational Sorting, Human Capital, and Discrimination states, lesbian women can earn more than their heterosexual counterparts irrespective of marital status while gay men earn less than their married heterosexual counterparts but more than their cohabiting heterosexual counterparts. Sexuality should not be affect meaning sexuality should not affect the wages if all employees are working for the same amount of time with the same skill set. Gender and sexual harassment go hand in hand with the wage gap issue. 1 in 3 women say they have been the victim of sexual harassment in the workplace. Two movement of 2018 highlighted not only sexual harassment but expressed pay inequality and representation of women in leadership position. As more cases of harassment and assault have been public, meaning have become public, a 2018 survey by market research company IPSOS and NPR found 69% of Americans believe the Me Too movement has helped produce an environment where people accused of sexual assault or harassment will be held accountable and address the issue of wage gap. It is important for everyone, regardless of sex, gender, ethnicity, age, and educational achievements to be aware of the wage gap, for we cannot eradicate something that no one knows about. The more people know about this injustice, the more voices there will be fighting against it. The more voices there are, the more likely they will be heard. This is prejudice that someone you know or you care about, or even you yourself is affected by. The first step to getting rid of the wage gap is to spread the word. Equality will rise from the voices of the masses against the sexism and the racism of the wage gap. These are my references. Thanks for watching my presentation on the wage gap. Hope you enjoyed it.